Recording is on.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another edition of the Geeky Bros podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
It's your boy Darcy.
And this is Big Geek Umar. How y'all doing today?
I'm always ready for a war again. I had to throw that in there, man.
That's a perfect segue, actually, into what our topic for today is. It's really just one topic broken down into several different aspects. Last week, unfortunately, we are all grieving from the loss of Chadwick Boseman, who was our Black Panther, our King T'Challa. And yeah, we all figured that, he was such a profound icon in many different levels, and we all wanted to do an appreciation episode. So let's start off with talking about what are our thoughts on the actor. So Darcy, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Tons of stuff has come up since then,
Yeah.
And this morning I woke up and I was flipping on IG and I saw this video clip of him talking about there would be no Black Panther if there was no Denzel Washington. And he was telling the story about how Denzel Washington paid for a part or an entirety of his schooling. I think it's a portion of his schooling to Howard University, and how that paved the way. But then he had this beautiful segue in this speech, and he's kind of the guy who I feel like he's very thoughtful about what he says. And when he did that speech, I don't feel like he's not the kind of person in those speeches to do maybe a lot, but this speech felt like it was just, he was saying about how Denzel Washington, it's not only that he helped pay and that enabled, Chadwick Boseman to have the career, but that all the actors in the Black Panther stand on Denzel Washington's shoulders, because Denzel Washington is one of those people who set out, a path and trailblazed and fought against and all that kind of stuff that enabled all of them to kind of have a blueprint in the industry. Yeah. And I was just watching that this morning, and I was just kind of blown away, because it was one of those, I'm not sure exactly what event it was, but it's one of those speeches where people can be I'm gonna congratulate this other person, but he was so in it that, Denzel is the kind of guy where he's strong. Yeah. And you could see the tears building in his eyes. And then when it came time for the applause, it was Denzel that first one up. And Denzel's definitely not the kind of guy to be oh yeah, thank you for talking about me. Yeah. But it was kind of a moment of I think he gave Denzel a moment of true appreciation for everything that he had done with his life. And that moment is so telling of who Chadwick was, because of how much he was, it takes a level of humility to stand in front of a large group of people and then just really give appreciation to another human being for their lifelong sacrifice, and to not use that platform for some form of self-congratulation.
Yeah.
That's the thing on top of my head right now.
T?
Yeah, man, I have to admit this one, and I can't really explain why. I think maybe it has something to do with the fact that we obviously lost one of our superheroes, our close friend of ours, Justin, to cancer as well. But this one definitely hit home for me in terms of the huge loss that we all experienced with the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Him as a person, him as an actor. Obviously, we didn't know him personally, but just the way he portrayed himself on and off screen, from what we've seen, was just phenomenal in the sense of how humble he was, how much of a class act he was. Yeah. It still boggles my mind. Sorry. It's a huge, I can't really find the words, but I was just very astounded by the fact that nobody outside of his family knew that he was sick, and that the fact that he wanted to make, I assume, his reason was he wanted to make this about like his work. He wanted it to make it about the work and not have people, give him sympathy and especially with Black Panther and the message that it conveyed and how much of an impact he already knew going in before it had even come out, how much of an impact he automatically understood that this movie meant and that it would create for people in the Black community. And part of the reason, I feel he probably didn't want it to be people to come out and see the movie as a sign of sympathy, where it was like, no, this movie is bigger than me. It's bigger than the cast. It's going to live on, and it's going to be impactful and inspirational, and that you can see it in terms of the young Black youth that were inspired by it. I remember I was watching a video and someone was talking about it was for Jimmy Fallon, where he basically he set up this room where people, it was like the poster, and there was this one girl who was supposed to give thanks to the poster and just give a message to the cast and basically state what Black Panther as a movie did for her. And she said something along the lines of how her son found it to be very impactful. He's a little kid, like maybe 7 years old. And she's like, there's two Black figures or two Black influences that that my son really looks up to. And that's the first one being Obama. And then the second one being the cast members of Black Panther because of what it stood for. And I think, Chadwick going in, he understood that, and he knew how important this movie and this role was. And it's very admirable for him to withhold his suffering and make it more about the art. And I think that's part of why it was such a huge blow to everyone, because, it was so unexpected. And then, sorry to trail on, I'll wrap it up in a second.
No, please.
I always say I fucking hate the internet sometimes. And my main reason is because of, I remember seeing that video, and there's been posts that have been circulating regarding it. But when it first came out, I remember seeing the video of him. He was talking about a campaign. I can't remember what specifically. And obviously he looked like he was very slender, right? And he looked very ill. And you know how the internet can be. They often have no filter, and they can be cruel. Yeah. And so, there was comments like, oh, he looks like a crackhead, and other people are saying, oh, he must be preparing for a role or whatever. Very insensitive comments, and not realizing that he was sick. He was literally dying, right? And it's heartbreaking. Going back and looking at that video now, not being aware of what was going on in his life, and him choosing to kind of keep that from the public and suffer in silence, in a sense, was admirable, but also very sad and disheartening at the same time. But it just goes to show what an incredible man, an incredible human being that he was, and how humble he was. And so I, for one, have so much respect for him. I didn't know him personally, but I mean, he's touched me in a lot of ways. And I got I had to represent, man.
Nice.
I got the Black Panther necklace, just to.
I've literally been trying to find something for me to wear, especially but nothing is being delivered near as fast enough. Yeah,
but man. I mean, it's honestly, it was hard, man. And like I said before, with Justin passing and whatnot, and it hit a lot closer to home, especially considering it was cancer as well, and we lost our homie to cancer this year. So yeah, it's honestly just a healthy reminder of how fragile life is, and how we really do take it for granted a lot of the times. And it's me being in the health industry, equally important and something that is always on the back of my mind in terms of how important it is to, focus on health and getting your physical, getting those checkups and whatnot, and, changing your lifestyle. Darcy, we talked a little bit about it last week with your podcast when we did the interview. And that's a point that I definitely want to continue to drive home in my work and what I do, and the importance of, being a little bit more neurotic, and in the sense of, checking yourself out, going and getting your physical on a regular basis, regardless of, how you feel. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And I'm not, discrediting Chadwick and suggesting that he didn't do any of those things, because, life works in unpredictable ways. But yeah, I've rambled on long enough, so I'm going to pivot over to Umar.
Yeah, I would say that for me, I had a great deal of respect for him and admiration for him, actually, when he was cast, when I saw him in Civil War, when I saw him in Black Panther, and then subsequently when I saw him in Infinity War and also in Endgame. I have watched a few of his other films. I haven't been able to see 42 yet, and I haven't seen The Blood Brother or something like that, the war movie he
Five
did.
Bloods.
The Five Bloods, thank you. So those are, and also he also has one more movie that's going to be coming out posthumously. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Like, let's just say that when I saw him in Civil War, I became an instant fan of Black Panther, but also of the actor.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out that he, and it was actually, I've read a lot of very touching tributes to him this past week, which all of them made me cry. And yeah, like, I think it's made me quite emotional, and it's hit hard for me, is because we lost our good friend Justin this past year, and we all saw Black Panther together. And I think that was the last. No. We saw Infinity War, all of us together as well. But like, so all of those kind of emotions, just like the personal aspect of it. But reading all the tributes, I was able to find out that, like, he did his own stunts. They originally wanted him to speak. He was the one who insisted on the accent, and that the dialogue in Civil War, where it was him and John Kenny kind of just speaking in I can't remember the language, Osaka.
Tulsa or something with the click.
Yeah. So like that was kind of like on the spot. Like they decided to do that on the spot, and he learned how to pronounce the words that he needed to do, like, just before they started filming. And like that kind of dedication and attention. And then also in Black Panther, how him and Ryan Coogler were like working very hard to kind of bring forward. And he was always thinking about, like you were saying, Tactix, like he was always bringing forward and thinking what this would mean for everybody else. And you can see that in the performance. And it's nice to know that it was also intentional. It wasn't like, none of it was accidental. It was all intentional. But what I really enjoyed and admired about him was that every time I'd always seen him in interviews or even in SNL and stuff like that, there was a poise to him. There was elegance and sophistication, but at the same time, fun and sincerity and sweetness. And like the idea that this man was literally diagnosed with stage 3 right before his world exploded, and he did his own stunts for he was in the Black Panther outfit in Civil War, which was incredibly uncomfortable, and like he did all the press, and he went from stage 3 to stage 4. He went through surgeries and chemotherapy, and I'm just like, people say, oh, actors are kind of like spoiled brats, or like there are people who like don't really work hard, they just get like big paychecks. And I would say that is kind of an unfair kind of description to put on to actors in like on the acting field, because like they're putting themselves out there all the time. But like I would say that Chadwick Boseman not only exemplified the greatest aspects of acting, but he did a much harder job than like anyone I can think of, like fighting stage 3 and 4 colon cancer and doing your own stunts, long hours on set, and also like constant trips around the world for promotions and like jet lags up the wazoo, and then also like having to do these speeches like you were saying, Darcy, and like all like kind of putting yourself out there, things that would like shrink the rest of us, and just the combination of that and also what I was seeing of him and him and even a person of color myself, like I was viewing it from someone who is used to watching Bollywood films where they, like, not to knock too much of Bollywood, but like they kind of take a lot from the West and they try to be like the West in order to like get a lot of like interest going. Black Panther almost did the exact opposite. It's a no, let's bring our culture and like show it to them. I'm not sure if you guys ever saw the Jason Scott Lee Bruce Lee film, Dragon the Bruce Lee story.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a line that always stuck with me. It was when he was trying to, like, just before he had to like duel a guy to like keep training white people, and they're like, they're the enemy, and he was like, no, white people aren't the enemy. They just have never seen the beauty of our culture. Let's show it to them. And Black Panther was that, and Chadwick Boseman led that, in my opinion, and so I've always very much found that to be very meaningful and he kind of just constantly exemplified that greatness, that elegance, that sophistication, that cultural modesty as well. And kind of going to what you were saying, Darcy, about like the speech, I remember him actually, and Angela Bassett kind of said that in her, who played his mom in Black Panther. She was saying that like there's a connection there as well, because he had told her so she came to Howard to his alma mater for like a commencement address, because I think she's like a alumni or something like that. So she had a young student who was supposed to kind of like take her on stage for her speech, like kind of guide her and like take her up the steps and all that sort of stuff. That was Chadwick Boseman, and he kind of reminded her of that when they were playing mom and son, and she was like, it really helped to kind of like bond us and to also create that level. And she was like, I really did feel proud of him the way a mother would be. And I was like that, like I was just like, all right, Angela Bassett's not making me cry. And I was just like, so yeah, like my thoughts on him was that far too soon, and but at the same time, he sacrificed so much to give us so much. And, you know, just honoring him would be to continue on that.
There's like 2 points that like I've heard you guys say that I wanted to circle on. One was like, so Umar, you were talking about how sometimes people look at the actors and give them an unfair judgment, right?
Yeah.
And when he was filming Defy Blood, so I saw a clip from an interview where I think I had the guy's name up, but I forgot it already. But it was an older actor in the movie Defy Blood, who's like his like co-star or like one of the main cast members, and he was saying that he regrets now his original thought of Chadwick Boseman, because they were filming in, I'm probably going to get the country wrong, but I think it was Vietnam.
I think so too.
And because I'm pretty sure it was on the Vietnam War. Yeah. And so they were in Vietnam filming like on location, hot weather in the mountains. Okay. And he had an entourage with him, a whole lot of people. And his original thought was that he was being a diva because, the Black Panther got into his head and all this kind of stuff. But of course, since nobody knew that he was battling, like at this point, I think stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
That he's like, you could see him tear up when he said it. He's like, because he's realizing, like, when he's trying to say, you know, he's like, I didn't realize that those were people taking care of him. He was still fighting every day, going through the whole battle as much as everybody else, with a whole other war going on inside of him. And yet he's still, and those people are there to care for him, not to boost his ego, like, literally to try to keep him alive, you know? And so you can see the regret in that. And then like it's a testament, and it's just a more exemplifying on your point. And then there was something that Tactix said early on. It was like, the Obama and T'Challa kind of like seeing them as like a black idols or examples. And I feel like I was thinking about it after Tactix said it, and it was like, you know, Obama is one of one of the major first on the biggest stage in the world to see, you know, a black man be well poised, elegant, and very much in a leadership perspective. Not saying that there weren't many before him, but that like the world got to see it in a giant way, right? Like unanimously, people aren't missing that anymore, right? Like, you know, as big as the Fresh Prince is, like where, you know, it's known in like a rural country in a place where they don't have televisions and people still know who the Fresh Prince is. Like, people know who Obama is. And I think T'Challa, it was the you know, even though a fictional character is a representation of that and a representation of an origin version of what, you know, a black male leader can be, a true African leader representation, especially for people in the West who feel separated from their origins. And, you know, there is something in that. And I think also the fact that, you know, you got to see, you know, it's a movie, so it gets to show you this origin between his, like, he's obviously a great leader right out of the gate, but he also has this challenge to overcome in terms of doing what is right with integrity. Like the line that T'Chaka says to him, that he's like, you know, you're a good man, and it's hard for a good man to be a king.
Yeah.
And it is hard. And in both the movie and in life, he was the good man who is hard to be a king and still was that great king at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Very well said, Darcy. I think in regards to the representation, I think they did a phenomenal job at that and just what it stood for, because, you know, obviously like Black Panther wasn't the first black superhero that we got from the Marvel universe, but the symbolism of what it represents in the term of, you know, when we often watch movies and we see black people betrayed in those movies, it's often, you know, we're either gangsters or like some kind of bullshit like that. Like we're, you know, we're soldiers, we're drug dealers or whatever. Like we're
cool and shit, you know?
Yeah. We're not always depicted in the best light. And with Black Panther, it's like we're being depicted as royalty, you know, as leaders, which was so impactful, especially for the youth today, right? Because of that, going back to that whole Obama thing, right? It was like you made it possible. It no longer became just a dream where it was like, oh, one day, someday, maybe if we're lucky, there'll be a black president. It's like, no, now it was a reality. And then now with the representation of T'Challa as king, you know, young black, just not even just black, just young people in general are seeing that and they're like, wow, like that's amazing. Like that symbolism is such a powerful statement in the universe as a whole. And I that's another thing that I really, really appreciated and why I value the movie so much and why I understand the impact that it had in the black community as a result of that.
Yeah, sorry,
I have a quick thing I just want to like throw here because it's like beaming through my head. Why that representation matters. Imagine you have a superpower, and your superpower is that you can create anything in front of you that you can imagine, right? But if you've never seen anything like what those leaders represent, you have a harder time creating it. Some people have great imagination and will still be able to create it, but a lot of people need some visual. And once they see with the Obamas and the T'Challas, then they are able to start creating that for themselves, and they're like fueling the person who has that superpower and that imagination to create whatever they want in front of them. And that's why representation matters so much. Because
it's kind of like Green Lantern with the ring, like how he creates or manifests that based off of what he's seen before,
or what he can imagine.
I
like, for me, what you were saying, Tactix, like just one that actually add on that, like two things. One, the fact that we see him as a king, but a king of a society that is actually more advanced. that
Yeah.
like literally every other society is actually primitive.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the more advanced. They have the better technology. They have the better understanding. They have the more knowledge and and just everything about them is superior. They are the ones that, like, I mean, for crying out loud, they're the ones who held back Thanos. But then also what you're talking about in terms of representation and how that like allows for how that matters. I was actually reading a woman's post after Chadwick's passing, and how she was saying that this really affects her because she worked at I think no, sorry, her daughter. Her daughter was. They all went to I think one of those like those festivals where like old European culture. I can't remember what they're called right now. And so it's the daughter wanted to go up on stage as a princess to be welcomed by the king. And like this is a Victorian era type king who's on a stage, and he's like welcoming the little girl, like just like kids coming up and like welcoming all that sort of stuff. But she came on stage dressed up not as like a Victorian outfit or like anything like culturally appropriate for the Victorian era. She came up dressed up as a Wakandan,
Oh,
as
wow.
Black Panther. And you would think that people would kind of look at her and be like, I don't know about this, but like the man on stage didn't even miss a beat. He was like, and we are blessed to receive a princess from the nation of Wakanda. Please come on stage. And like people started clapping, and she did the arms cross and then like everything like that. And I'm just like, yo, like, of course Chadwick Boseman, he made that happen. Like he helped to make that happen along with everybody else. But representation matters because even people who are doing something that's supposed to be historically accurate in these sorts of plays, they have something that they can welcome someone as equal. And he didn't say, oh, like a citizen of Wakanda. He didn't say someone from, dressing up as from Wakanda. He's like a princess from Wakanda because we, like you were saying, there is royalty there.
Yeah.
So that's just my final point.
To make a parody between the storytelling, so Tactix was saying, like, I think it was you, Tactix, it said like a society, was it you, Tactix, or Umar? I'm feeling we get it wrong, but this has a society that's well established, right? And it's not one where the representation, thank you, is, like, okay, so a lot of North American films work off of the premise that Rocky set forward, right? Which is the underdog story coming up.
Yeah.
And then you take anime, and a lot of their stories are the internal struggle of a character who, not always, but like there's a lot of them where they're really powerful, and the battle is more internal. And Black people in North American films are usually placed in the Rocky scenario and the worst scenario, right? Like, oh, they're always extremely poor. They're always like, they're not well kept to society and a whole bunch of things. And that's their journey. And that whole movie is actually a battle, even though that Killmonger is the external force. His whole battle is an internal force battle. He doesn't need anything. He's no underdog story. He is nowhere close to the underdog. He is the top dog in the whole story. He has all the wealth. He's ridiculously intelligent. He has all of the physical power. He has all of the tech. His whole battle is not with the external world, even though he has an external battle to face. It was really about what that battle meant. And I think that's also a big thing that plays in the subconscious of people, is to see, Black people where they don't need, the society or the white man to pick them up, and or they have to fight and find their way. It's like, no, he doesn't need any of that. He has to figure out something for himself. And I think that also, means a lot to the world in ways that maybe they haven't realized, but it plays a factor.
And so that kind of like leads into my next question that I want to ask you both, and then we'll answer myself. What were your thoughts on Black Panther the movie, or actually Black Panther the character? Let's say Black Panther the character in the MCU, because I don't want to just limit to his movie.
I love the character. When he was first introduced in Civil War, I thought, I didn't know much about Black Panther. I'd seen him in like different like iterations of like the cartoon and stuff, like from like I don't even remember what cartoon I saw him in first, but yeah, I thought Chadwick did an amazing job. I mean, I didn't really have anything to compare it to, but I believed him as the character. I was he's like one of the characters where I was like, yo, I would love to see like a standalone movie with him in it, right? You obviously can't say that for every single Avenger, but him specifically, like I was like, yeah, I'm all gung ho for it. Him as a character, I forget which one of you guys said it, but you guys mentioned how he had a lot of input in the storyline. Yeah, thanks, Umar. He had a lot of input. He was taking credit for everything. That was me.
Yep. I can see Darcy be like, okay, I'm gonna let this slide.
But yeah, so he had a lot of input on the storyline, the usage of the dialect in terms of how they spoke. But one thing that got overlooked, and I personally appreciate it, was the fact that his fighting style was very reminiscent of capoeira, which is a Afro-Brazilian martial art that was derived or developed by African Brazilian slaves, right? Yeah. And so I noticed the fighting style, and I was really appreciative of that. And even Michael B. Jordan had made a comment about that in one of the interviews that they had done, where he said that Chadwick was very adamant about adding that in there because he had been practicing it specifically for this role. And I loved that element where it's like they really were reaching and trying to bring as much of the African culture into this movie as possible and trying to be as authentic as they possibly could. And I remember watching another interview where they actually went to I think it was South Africa and got immersed in the culture, him and Ryan Coogler, and did their research. And yeah, they really went to depths to make it as authentic as possible and like learn the culture and interact with the people and get a deeper insight into how they live and like their philosophy and whatnot. And I really appreciate that when like actors really like go that extra mile for the love of the craft, and not in a sense of like being method, but more so just like showing an appreciation and trying to come off as authentic as possible when portraying a character or when trying to convey a particular story. And so I really appreciated Black Panther in that aspect, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. He's an amazing actor. The other movie that I saw him in was the James Brown movie, Get On Up, and you know I'm a big fan of James Brown, so I was definitely very into that movie, and I thought he did a great portrayal of him as well. And yeah, I know that wasn't part of the question, but just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah.
How about you, Darcy?
Yeah, for me, like I similar to Tex, I didn't have a whole lot of historical knowledge of the character, but the thing that I kind of based off of, I don't know what you call this, but there was an animated Black Panther film that was like still animation. I want to say like where it's kind of like it's like a audio over top of like comic.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and so I'd seen that, and I was really impacted by that. Not because of like, well, the art was beautiful. Like the art was beautiful. It's obviously it's African style, but the thing I liked about it is like, you know, when you watch like anime that's like, oh, this looks like very traditional China, like in a representation, or this looks like you see that in like some of the Avatar or Korra, The Last Airbender, where they do some of the like more psychedelic stuff, especially in Legend of Korra, and it looks like ancient China, like the way they used to animate, like, or not animate, sorry, they used to draw the actual scroll type of stuff. Like it looked very ancient and it had a very rich feel to it that felt like it had a real history. But the other thing I was really impacted by was the way he spoke and the dialogue. There's this one conversation, this clip where these guys from the West are trying to buy them out. And the way he speaks was so strong. It was so like, it was as strong as somebody telling you to go F yourself with never saying you to go F yourself. And yet at the same time, it almost felt like he was giving the guy an education. at the same time, and there was so much regal and royalty, yet like humility and power. And when I saw that and the tone of voice he used, for me it was like there's something in there for me as a black man I have to learn. And so when I was waiting to see the Black Panther movie come out and waiting to see him in Civil War, that was the one thing that I was kind of waiting on. It was like me waiting to see, it's like, okay, you can do Batman, but how do you do Bruce Wayne? Right? That's how I was feeling going in. And I don't know, I didn't have the Batman history, but I did have a little bit of a hint of the Bruce Wayne, and I needed to see that Bruce Wayne hit. And all the stuff that Umar was saying about the work that he put into making the character a certain way, and the stuff that Tack is saying about, you know, all the things about grounding it, you know, that stuff like translated well. If he had done the American accent, because it would have translated for other audiences, I would have compared it against that, and I would have been disappointed. And the fact that he took it to where he took it, you know, because the actor who played T'Chaka, he does speak that, like that was his native tongue. So when working and bouncing off of that, it's like, you know, he had a bar to reach, and he reached it so fast. And you know, I think my favorite part of the Black Panther character, all the fights and stuff is cool. It's his Bruce Wayne moments, his T'Challa moments. Those are the parts that are the best for me in the movie, is when he's not in costume.
So I have really nothing I can add to any of that. So you guys have pretty much said it all. So I think that's kind of like easily, and you've kind of started it, Darcy. Is like the next question I want to ask is, what were your favorite moments of Black Panther? And I'll start this time by saying that there were two things that I remember that really stood out to me. And like, I've also rewatched Civil War, Black Panther, Infinity War, and Endgame all this week, kind of in honor of Chadwick Boseman, as well as some other movies. But watching it this time around, I noticed there were two things that very much stood out. And one being in Civil War, like right from Civil War, where he is as physically strong as Captain America. He's he's more rich and has more resources than Tony Stark. And he is also the one who has suffered akin to Tony Stark in terms of like loss. But while all of these heroes and also Winter Soldier, who's like, to be honest, I would say call him more a victim in that film, all of them cannot control themselves. All of them are in conflict, and all of them are allowing what he said is vengeance taking over them. And it's resulting in such devastation for everything. And he alone was the one to overcome that. He found out who the real murderer of his father was, and that was enough for him to kind of say, hold on. And what my favorite line was that he's like, vengeance has consumed you, when he was talking to Zemo, just as they've consumed them. I'm done with it, letting it consume me. And he just puts his claws away, and then he stops Zemo from killing himself, puts him in a chokehold, but not to harm him, but to restrain him, and said very calmly, the living are not done with you yet, in a very just way, almost a king making
a boss line.
It was a boss line, but it was also like such a deeply philosophical and regal statement that he didn't have to yell, kind of like what you were saying. He taught the lesson while also telling the guy to shut up. So it's interesting that you said that, because I felt that. And the second one was that when he steps out of the portal, just before the big fight in Endgame, and you see him like flanked by his sister and also Okoye, you're just like, oh, thank God they're here. And to have a person of color being the first one to step out, and everyone be like, oh, thank God Black Panther is here. Mm-hmm. They're saved. Those two things, I was like, he did that. He exemplified that. He brought those things out and kind of showed that, people of color can also not only be the highly sophisticated one, they can be the more intelligent one, they can be the more wealthy one, but also they could be the salvation as well.
Yeah. thing I also
those were my favorite moments anyway.
Thing I liked what you're saying there was that about his arc in Civil War, that he faced all of that. Like everybody else had all of these other people's input, right? Tony Stark and Captain Rogers, they're back and forth, and I believe this and I believe that, and other people saying this and the world's saying that, and no one's really like trying to influence T'Challa, but he's watching it all, and by the end of it, he comes to that restraint with nobody else. It's like you didn't have Black Widow pop out of here and be like, hey, I got something for you to consider, and he's like, oh my God, never thought of it that way, and then changes his mind. He came to that realization on his own. I think there's something really powerful, and not just the way he spoke, about the living are not done with you yet, but it's that grounding in, I want to say, the being part of the origin, as in his Wakanda lineage, but growing through like all those amazing like African proverbs. It's like he's grounded in the tradition of the where they started, and there's part of his teaching and his training his entire life. As his dad said to him, he's like, I don't know if I'm ready to be a king. It's like, did you not train your entire life? Did you not walk by my side? Did you not do all these things? Right? You are ready, whether you feel like you are or not, my favorite parts in all the films go between, like the stuff that Umar you just said, I think I'm gonna say my favorite one, just as like I make one point and then my favorite one. I think I'm gonna wrap up all of the fun moments, like him and Shiri together, like their dynamic, it's just like, oh, guess what I called them? What? Sneakers. Oh, you killing me. So
I also love, like, they probably have the best sibling portrayal I have ever seen, like the healthiest sibling portrayal I've ever seen. Like, these are two people who are royalty, neither one wants to fight the other for power, and also like they're still kids in a way. Like he's like, yo, delete that footage, and she's like, oh, it's for research purposes.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, here's another side fact that I read up on, that Chadwick went to the casting calls. Most of the stars don't go to the casting calls, and he went to the casting calls. That's why the dynamics he had, like he went in there to make sure that it worked, right? But my favorite scene, and it's even more so that I found out that it was his idea. I didn't think it was his idea. It's the scene between him and Michael B. Jordan, where Michael B. Jordan makes the statement of like, bury me at sea, because my brothers and sisters knew that death was better than bondage. Thanks for helping me with that. And I thought that would have been like Michael B. Jordan or Ryan Coogler's idea for some reason. I did not realize it was Chadwick Boseman. The original script was supposed to be that he asked to be buried in Wakanda, or accepted the idea of being buried in Wakanda, and it was Chadwick who put the idea that, like, because he was putting the idea, because he spent all this time like coming from South Carolina and going to South Africa and all this stuff. He was placing a lot of the ideas of the fact that like the separation between the African American man and the African man, and that dilemma that we're trying to be connected to our heritage, but we're not really connected to our heritage, and so he put that idea in there to get that, to change that direction. I mean, that's like one of the most impactful things I ever seen in my life. And to find out that he was an influencer on that, like, damn.
Wow. T?
Damn. Yeah, Umar, you took mine. So, that was an amazing scene, and a huge turnaround for him in regards to the storyline. I really enjoyed it, especially I love the line from Civil War where he's talking about death, and he says something along the lines of, in my culture, death isn't the end; it's a stepping stone. Like, that was such a powerful line, even though he had no intention of following that perspective initially, but then to see everything kind of come full circle and him kind of practicing restraint, like you mentioned, I found to be very powerful and one of my favorite moments. Another one would be what was it? had it on the tip of my tongue and I lost it. Damn it. What was it? Oh, where he is. So they're trying to revive him with the flower, and he goes off into the spiritual realm, and he has that interaction with his father, who's telling him to cross over. It's his time or whatever. And when T'Challa actually stands up to his father, and he's just like, no, like what you did was wrong. Why did you leave that boy there? And like, you know, it's kind of him kind of understanding or empathizing with, you know, Killmonger's his vocation in terms of his point of view in terms of like why he's doing what he's doing. Obviously, it's an extreme method, but as a result of the neglect put in place by his father, right? And you know, he's to blame, and now T'Challa has to kind of clean up his mess. And I found that to be a very powerful scene, because you go from T'Challa like really idolizing and looking up to his father to now being like, you know, you're flawed. I grew up thinking that you were this perfect, prolific figure, you know, you could do no wrong, but then I see the errors of your ways, and it's time that we make a change, because, you know, especially with Killmonger's point of view, and even I forget the girl, his girlfriend in the movie.
Oh God, Shuri Okoye and Nakia,
yes. So she had a similar point of view, obviously not as extreme as Killmonger, but it was kind of like, it was great, that great coming of it, like coming full circle, where T'Challa actually meets kind of in the middle, where it's like, okay, we don't have to go to the extremes and implement those like extreme measures like how Killmonger was trying to portray, but somewhere in the middle, where we start to expose what it is that Wakanda what Wakanda actually is. And that ending credit scene really solidifies that favorite moment for me, where the one of the members of the UN, is it the UN that they were?
One of the white dudes,
yeah. He's like, what can a third world country have to offer us? And then
country like sheep herders,
yeah.
Like, and everyone just starts smiling. Like,
you're just smiling. He's like, yo, you don't even know. So it was just crazy. I really love that.
The one white dude who actually went to Wakanda was like, yo, these guys don't even know.
Yeah, you know, like, yo, they have no fucking clue. So
you know, I want to see the what's the guy's name? I forget. I love him.
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, Martin Freeman. I want to see his character just like move to Wakanda. Like after I was watching Black Panther, I was like, I want him to see him like basically just leave the United States and go to Wakanda, and that be some kind of a statement in like the Marvel universe of just like, yeah, I'm gonna be over here. This place, is right? There's also two things that one, Nakia, I think I said that right. I love her scene in Korean. I just love that. Like, it's like when she does that total change inflection of her voice. I'm like, oh, you got that right. But there's something else that I have to throw here about Black Panther the movie and what it represents. Yeah. The whole movie is a poignant metaphor for Africa to America for a Black person. Mm-hmm. Because Killmonger is a representation of all the slaves left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that moment where he stands up to T'Chaka in the spiritual realm is the dialogue that the film is trying to articulate. It's not to say that like, okay, you know, Africa's got this whole big thing, but it's like there is a underlying conversation there as well that goes beyond just like, you know, this is what the States did. But what also didn't, you know, in this case, the uncle not do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. I had to throw that out there.
Of course. So that kind of helps to actually lead to my last question. And that's like, now that unfortunately Chadwick has passed on, and may he rest in peace and power and in love, what do you guys want to happen with the Black Panther franchise? Like, do you want them to recast it, or do you want...
No recasting.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to wait for you to finish speaking. No recasting for me.
No, honestly, I don't even want them to recast. And for me personally, like, I'm glad like here's my possible recourse, and you guys can say like if you like it or not, or if you all have your own. In the comics, T'Challa actually abdicates, and his sister takes over as the next Black Panther, and also as Queen. And to be honest, I think, given how much this would mean for like women and also Black women as well, if they actually went that route, I think that would be something that like Chadwick would be supportive of. So I would actually wouldn't mind if Shuri became the for Black Panther 2, that Shuri's actually now the Black Panther and also Queen of Wakanda. But what do you guys think?
I feel like that's very plausible, especially if it's stemming from the comics. When you were saying that, it kind of reminded me of that moment in Endgame where it's all the female Avengers. They kind of get together and then they just wreck shop. And I feel like that was some kind of a segue that they're trying to set up in regards to this. And I feel like, I know Chadwick kind of kept a lot of this stuff close to the chest, but part of me feels like he had to have had some sort of talks with Kevin Feige in that regard, in terms of like the plans for the future going forward, right? And so
the movie was pretty delayed compared to what you would expect it to be. You would expect it to come earlier, but though Ryan Coogler did say that like he had all this like plan, like dialogue that he was writing for him, so he didn't know. But I mean, maybe Feige knew, and he was just like pushing Ryan Coogler out without reason. Like
I can see that like Feige. Well, no, he actually like Feige is a pretty strong taskmaster when it comes to like be on time and be on on schedule. So yeah, he may have known, but
I feel like he might have, and because we haven't had any announcements about Black Panther 2, and so I'm not in a rush to see another Black Panther. If they do decide to go along with a Black Panther 2, I'm definitely all game for Shuri taking over the mantle of Black Panther. I'm not totally against them recasting the character, because I agree. John Campea kind of spoke on this already, and I kind of agree with his point in the sense that Chadwick, like we said earlier, it wasn't about him. The Black Panther as a movie is much bigger than him, and what it represents goes beyond him as a person, right? And it's not to discredit him and who he was and whatnot, right? But he knew that he was sick, and he chose to do this role because of what it stood for, what it represented, and the impact that it was going to have. And I think if given the choice, he would want that to carry on and continue, right? And create that influence, right? Of course, you can still do it with Shuri in the role, and it'll still have that impact. I'm not suggesting that, but I think, if they went along and they decided that, okay, we want to continue with the T'Challa storyline, and we want to bring somebody else into the role and have them do it justice, obviously there is always going to be some comparisons and whatnot, but it's kind of like how we looked at Heath Ledger's Joker, right? It's like, he passed away, and then we got another Joker with Joaquin Phoenix and the other Jared Leto, which we'll just kind of disregard him. But again, that wasn't in the same kind of universe, but it's not like Joaquin Phoenix isn't disrespecting Heath Ledger because he's now the Joker, right? It's a character, right? And just because somebody else takes on the role of Black Panther, it doesn't mean that we forget about the amazing and phenomenal job that Chadwick brought to the character, right? We're never, ever going to forget that, just like we never forget Heath Ledger. Joaquin did his thing in Joker, but people always still refer back to Heath Ledger and how he bodied that role. So for me, yes, of course, I miss Chadwick. I would love, unfortunately, he's passed, so we're never going to be able to see him play that role ever again. Well, I mean, they're doing the what if Elseworlds thing, so we kind of get a little taste of that as his last sign-off film. But you know, I'm not totally against it because of the fact of what it represents. It's big shoes to fill, and you know, he has to, whoever they were to get in that role would have to bring their A game. But I think Chadwick, you know, I don't think Chadwick's sitting there being like, you know, like,
No,
you know, I don't want anyone else playing the role after me, kind of thing.
Of course
right?
not. Of course
Yeah, of
not. I just feel like it's so hard. So like, if you're set up with an immediate problem, right? Which is that if you had a movie where the Black Panther character Wakanda matters in that story arc, right? Like not a Black Panther film, but like other MCU films where Wakanda matters, right? And the Black Panther character in Wakanda matters. Like they can't just like write it off where it's like, oh, we'll just have, you know, Shuri show up or Sequoia show up and handle the leadership of this situation, or maybe we have M'Baku show up and he handles something like in this particular situation, right? Then if you can't write that, then you have to face the fact of like, if you need the king or the leader of the country in this story, you have to figure out which one you're going with. And my worry is that you bring somebody in and it just, we can't know, and then it just feels flat and bad. If you gave it time, like a certain number of years, whatever feels appropriate, then you have the time to build up maybe another character to replace. But I still feel like I'm just going to be like looking, and because it's not just he did a great job, it's he had the dynamics with everybody, and so like somebody else faking that dynamic with Sherry is going to feel weird. You know what I mean? Like that alone will be a nitpick that will just drive you insane.
I also can see a lot of actors choosing not wanting to do it, just like not just out of respect, but in the sense like, you know, they're how can they even represent like this? Like he defined it, and he had so much involved in it. So, me personally, like I would prefer the Shuri route because
I mean, I don't know if actors would go as far as stepping down from a project based off of that, because again, I don't deem it as disrespectful. I don't think I obviously I think some time needs to be passed. I don't think we need a Black Panther 2 right now or at all really. But if that's the route that they're going in, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, I've only watched the first movie, but it's like Harry Potter and Dumbledore, right? Didn't that dude pass away and then they replaced him with another character? Yeah. Mind you, he's not, I don't know if he's a main pivotal part of the Harry Potter story because I haven't gotten that far.
You started watching Harry Potter?
Yeah, but we'll save that for another podcast. but yeah. So I mean, I love Chadwick. I respect him as a human being and as what in terms of his character, in terms of the Black Panther role. And obviously some time needs to pass before, like even me, like if they were to announce Black Panther 2 is coming out in 2 years, I'd be like, too soon. I need some more time to like kind of breathe and let myself be okay. Just kind of like with the Heath Ledger thing, like I needed some time before I could accept another Joker. But I'm not against them taking over the role of Black Panther, especially if it's vital to the storyline.
I have something I want to throw here though. So, and I'm not trying to like paint like this is how I want a story to go or anything particular, but if they were to come out with a Black Panther in like 2 or a Wakanda film, let's call it a Wakanda film. Like forget
there is a Black Panther 2 announced.
Yeah. But like let's say they because of what happened. Yeah. So I'm just gonna say a Wakanda film because I have this arc in my head, and I'm like, if they wanted to continue, because they need Wakanda, like they can't just like forget Wakanda after we have Wakanda. You can't move forward and not have it part of the universe. It makes the universe bigger. So if there was a scenario where, and it was done well, I'm not going to paint how you would write this because I don't even want to like push my brain that hard. But for some reason, the Black Panther character is not existent in the universe, whether it's a passing or some scenario where he has disappeared, right? Am I going to make up how? But the mantle of Black Panther is, I would be intrigued by the idea of it fall. I think there's something in the comic related to this where it falls to, I think it fell to Killmonger at one point, which is already what we depicted. But if it falls to somebody else, or somebody else is rising to leadership, and it builds into a longer story, whether it's one movie or two movies, where Shuri, it's how Shuri gets to be taking over the throne, where it's like, who leads the country, right? Is the question, because he's absent or passed away, and who leads the country, and all of that is actually an arc to build the Shuri character into like the next big leader of a different kind with different way of doing it. I'd be really happy with that kind of a route, just because it keeps the universe, it builds on the characters we already have. And I would totally, like, if there was a logical way or a good story way to say, like, M'Baku takes over temporarily, and then it's about building up Shuri, and maybe there's like a kin relationship they have, or maybe it's a power struggle. I don't know. I kind of prefer the kin relationship thing, where he's doing the good thing and then helps build her, and he's like, no, you really need to be the leader, but I'm gonna like hold this throne until you're ready and help build you to it. I would love to see like a Wakanda building of the universe and something to that degree, over a direct like recasting. I mean, I don't mind if like they had some absentee thing where he's like off in some other universe and they logically explain it because of some event that happens out of, I don't know, some other film, or the Marvel TV stuff. I can't remember her name right now. What's her name? The one that's doing Scarlet Witch. Like, if something were to explain because of the Scarlet Witch, he becomes absent, then all this stuff has to happen in Wakanda, and then later on they recast him with a new character who comes back, and because it was something that happened with Scarlet Witch, it explains why he's physically a different person, like why he looks different to us. It logically makes sense in our head because it's an alternate universe like version of him or something. Then I'm cool with that. I just don't want to like, this is the exact same character right away with expected all the same dynamics, all the same everything, and another actor's just, they're gonna have a different way of doing it, and we'll never unsee what we already know. So
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, thanks guys.
Cool. All right. Well, any final words before we wrap things up?
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. In Bombay.
Bombay.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching another edition of the Geeky Bros podcast. I'm your boy Tactix.
This is your boy Darcy.
And this is Big Geek Umar. Like and subscribe and live long and prosper, y'all.